Hi, everyone. We will start in around 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you for joining today's session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. We'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then we will go ahead and kick this off. Thank you for joining today's session. Please either have your cameras on or off, whichever you prefer. Obviously, we'd love to see everyone's faces. Okay, so I think for the sake of time, being mindful of the fact that we only have an hour for this session, we're gonna go ahead and kick it off. The session is recorded, so for those who want to review it later, of course, you're welcome to do that. I believe it will be shared out on the UN 2.0 website. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gagan Vasir. I'm a program management officer here at the UN Secretariat in the Department of Operational Support in the Office of the Undersecretary General. And for today's conversation, we'll be going through DOS's approach to innovation, primarily when it comes to driving methodical innovation and the toolkit that we've developed for the department in order to kind of harness and enable that. I would love for this conversation to be a conversation. So what that means is if you have a comment you'd like to make, the chat is open. Please do engage. We'll work to make this session as interactive as possible, as well as leave ample time at the very end for questions. And again, thank you so much for joining this session. And I hope everyone is having a fantastic UN 2.0 week so far. I recognize that in this virtual room, we have people from all backgrounds, UN and otherwise. And so I'd like to kind of kick us off here with just kind of understanding who's in the room today, so we can shape the conversation in that way. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is you have two options here. You can either go to slido.com. If you do so, you will see an ability to put in a code. The code is UN Innovation. Or if you have your mobile phone near you, please go ahead and open up your camera and just scan the QR code. And the third option is a link I'm going to share in the chat. You can click on that link as well. It should take you to Slido. Slido is an interactive tool which allows us to collect some insights from those joining today's call. It is anonymous. It should not require you to sign in by any means. But we're going to go through a couple of polling questions just to gather feedback on who's in the room, where you're coming from, and kind of your perceptions. and then we'll dive in. So I'm going to give everyone about 15 seconds. Again, either go to the website and type in the code UN Innovation, either scan the QR code or click on the link that's in the chat. Right now, you'll see nothing because it's not activated yet. But I'm going to go ahead and activate a couple of 3 questions we're going to have. The first, you already see it. We'd love to know, where are you calling in from today? Whether it's UN specific or otherwise. So what do you currently do for work? And we're seeing a lot of things here, right? So everything from planning, RBM, results-based management. We have some students in the room, business innovation, audit. Please continue to put in your answers. People from UNDP, UN from UNMISS. So kind of, good to hear, right? Good to see where people are coming from and kind of how you're approaching both UN 2.0 week, but also how you might approach the toolkit that we're going to go over today into your relevant work. And so perhaps in that lens, right, how does innovation fit in your role? Whether you're calling from a mission, whether you're a student or calling from another part of the UN ecosystem, does innovation have a role in your work on a day-to-day basis, or how do you see innovation fitting in your work? Again, the results and inputs are anonymous, but feel free to be as frank as possible. And you may realize maybe it doesn't, but that's what you're here today, to find ways to deploy innovation in your work. So we're seeing everything, and again, continue to put in your results here, but people want to increase efficiency, achieve results. Obviously a must win. Everyday business, doing things in a better way. We have folks on M&E, finding ways to address persistent challenges. I guess, for those either students or really earlier in their career, thinking about where else, they might be able to apply innovative thinking. Maybe a couple more seconds for those who still haven't submitted. I see a few people typing. We'd love to kind of hear from you as well to see, how does innovation fit in your work, or whether if you're exploring it, let's think through how you may want to explore it. Great question. So, someone asks, what is the definition of innovation? And that's a great question, right? We all define innovation in our own respective way. The way innovation might look and feel at a place like the UN is a bit different than how how innovation might look and feel at a place like Tesla or Amazon. I'll share my definition of innovation, and innovation for me is essentially doing something in a way that's different and better. How that looks and feels and the scale of it, of course, varies. And we'll kind of talk through today how the toolkit that we've built in the department allows for all definitions of innovation to be deployed. Perfect. And then final question, and however you define innovation, right? Whether it's very macro level or micro level, what do you consider to be the main barriers for you to be able to innovate in whatever you do? And this one, you can also submit multiple options. So what's causing you to perhaps not be as innovative as you would like to be? Time, of course. Culture, yes, of course. If we're not in a place where innovative thinking is appreciated, it can be hard to innovate. So as people are coming in, right? So what are we seeing? Culture, of course, is a big driver of innovation. What we're able to, what we cannot do. Everyone's busy, and so how do you innovate when you have constraints? Whether it's constraints for time, but also perhaps knowledge and resources, and of course support around leadership. A lot of us work in top-down institutions. If the leaders themselves don't want to create capacity for innovation or support innovation, how do we persist? So it's super helpful to kind of understand where people are coming from and kind of what's maybe limiting your ability to innovate. So, switching gears just slightly, and really appreciate everyone's feedback here. Even though we recognize there's many challenges around innovation here at the UN, and within our department, the Department of Operational Support, which provides operational support and services to the Secretariat and our missions, innovation is at the heart of our mandate delivery, right? Regardless of where you're calling in from today, work has changed over the last couple of years, especially in a post-COVID, post-pandemic world. We have new technologies now, AI and tons of others, and that requires us to adapt and actually utilize those innovations, those new technologies in our work. In the context of the UN, of course, Secretariat at least, we have member states who are expecting us to deliver better. And how do we do that in environments that's perhaps are resource constrained? Obviously, this is UN 2.0 week, and innovation is at the core of that quintet of change. And in the department, we're working diligently to harness and utilize innovation in our work. And of course, there's a broader system-wide strategy, right? Effectiveness in supporting the SDGs through innovation. And for us, in DOS, when thinking about innovation and how do we actually deploy it, similar to the feedback you all shared, we recognized there were certain challenges that existed that we had to overcome. The first really being around perceptions, right? Innovation, and someone brought this in one of the comments earlier. Innovation is pretty unclear. What is it? It's kind of vague. It can seem very grandiose, and by virtue of that, pretty scary. And because it's vague and grand, it seems difficult to execute. And we recognize that as being a major issue for enabling innovation in the department. Similarly, practicality. A lot of time we talk about innovation at a very, very high level, but so it's a lot of theory-based. But we are a department, and I think as a collective, people who want to do stuff. And so how do we actually execute? We found that there were a lot of approaches that were inconsistent. And so application was, of course, by virtue of that, challenging. For us, there was a lack of alignment, and we really feel that frameworks have to be aligned to the work that you do. And then, of course, there's fatigue. A lot of options on the table, right? A lot of approaches, a lot of methodologies. And for people who maybe just are new to innovation, multiple options lead to fatigue. And by virtue of that, no execution actually happening. And so for us, and in my role, I oversee and kind of drive innovation for our department. It was thinking through how do we develop something that not only touches on these 5 core areas, but ultimately enables us to accelerate and have a practical and shared language around what we mean by innovation and how we drive innovation. And in thinking about the components of innovation, we recognize there were 3 core components. There's, of course, the resources, tools, financial resources that one needs to innovate. There's, of course, good practices, leadership, support, encouragement, and autonomy. And of course, there's a broader culture, one that really harnesses and enables creativity. While we're as a department working on multiple of these fronts, the toolkit itself that we've developed was focused on that first component, which was giving people the resources they need to work through that fatigue, to work through that the issue of practicality, and work towards their innovation efforts. And that's what brought us to the DOS Innovation Toolkit. And I will just denote that you do have access to it. When you register for this session, on that page, there's a link that if you click into it, it will give you access to the toolkit itself. So if you want to follow along with that toolkit, of course, you're able to. So the DOS Innovation Toolkit is a toolkit that was made with a focus, of course, on the department and built off of what we're coined as a 3-phase approach to innovation delivery. We spent a year and some change doing extensive market research on what are best practices in the industry, both the development and foreign policy space, but also thinking of the commercial space around innovation. What are best practices when it comes to human-centered design? And then given the unique context in which the UN works, aligning that with the UN's approaches and capabilities. And through that research, through that analysis, what we developed for our department is a three-phase approach, focusing on discovery, design, and deliver. So discovery of the problem, the designing of mock solutions for said problem, and then of course, delivery of whatever your ideal solution is. For us in the department, as we were going through our innovation approach, what we recognized was a lot of times we come into innovation solutions with a predefined problem. We think we know what the problem is, and we develop innovations through that and on that. But oftentimes our problems are not the right problems. And so what we've worked to instill within the department itself is not starting with a problem statement, but rather a challenge statement. What challenge are you facing? Or what grand idea do you have? And then you work through the innovation life cycle to get to, at some point, a clear problem that you're working to solve. And so for us, that was quite important to ensure that we could get people to understand the notion of challenges versus problems. But through this methodology of discovery, design, and then deliver, our focus here was on execution, right? Theory is wonderful, but practicality is where the magic happens. And so what we have in the toolkit, for those who've been able to look through it, is not just these three grand core steps, but underlying that are a series of executable steps that enable whoever's working through the innovation lifecycle, innovation project, to of course execute on that, right? So it will play in the discovery phase, helping staff think about how do you actually understand the people and processes that are involved in your challenge statement. By virtue of that, how do you actually understand the problem that you're facing? Within design, how do you actually work through ideation? How do you sketch mock designs, whether they're physical mock designs or virtual mock designs? And then of course, how do you actually deliver, right? The three core components when you think about our innovation. And of course, underlying any innovation effort is of course change management. How do you ensure that as you're gonna disrupt whatever is happening, hopefully for the better, you are bringing people along so that when you do in fact deliver on your innovation, the resistance, if any, is pretty curtailed. And so the methodology that we developed and the toolkit that we developed is built off of this. And for those again who download the toolkit, it's a little over 70 pages that aims to be fairly comprehensive in what it is, but not exhaustive. And I want to clarify the difference between the two, right? It's comprehensive in the sense that it's meant to provide an end-to-end approach to an innovation project. How do you go from a challenge statement all the way to delivery in a way that's methodical? So hence it's comprehensive, but it's not exhaustive in the sense that when you go to a toolkit, you realize there's a prescribed way of doing something, right? There's one methodology that's shared for how to do process mapping. There's one methodology shared when it comes to developing or conducting user designs or user testing. We recognize that in the market, there are tons of resources available. There's a million and one ways that one can do user testing. But for us, the key here was to focus on what can most of the individuals that we work with within our respective area understand and execute on. And so what we've done is we've curated a set of resources and a process that works for a majority of people, but it's not exhaustive in a sense that it doesn't cover every methodology out there. So I do want to kind of clarify for those who are perhaps looking to a toolkit and wondering, Is 70-some pages enough to cover the entire market of innovation? The answer is no, but it's meant to provide people with a resource to work through their challenge statement. And so in that lens, right, so how do you actually work through your challenge statement? Right, as I mentioned in the toolkit itself, we have 14 step-by-step walkthroughs. How do you actually develop mock designs? How do you, if you want to do process mapping and stakeholder analysis, how do you actually do it? We also have 21 templates that have been made to be very easy to use. We always have templates that are fully completed. So if you're new to the approach, you know how it should look and feel when you've completed it. And then we also, of course, include a blank template for the individual, the user, to actually work through it. And then finally, the toolkit also includes 9 guides on best practices. So they're all one-pagers focusing on how do you develop a guide on user testing? How do you think about communication? How do you develop a training? Again, with the goal here being that this content should be sufficient enough to get most people what they need to work through an innovation. Okay. And again, if you have any questions, I'll actually ask, just unmute yourself and please do ask. I think that might be the easiest than just working solely through chat. Okay, so what we want to also do during our conversation today, as I mentioned, is to have a conversation, and part of that is making it interactive. And so we're going to have a couple portions here as we go through the toolkit a bit more, for which we would love your interaction. And so in order to do that, what we're going to work on together as a group is an example, a hypothetical example of what an innovation project might look like for our department. And again, for context, the Department of Operational Support works on a myriad of activities focused on the UN's operations, as the name implies. So what that means is we work from everything around support operations to special activities that might be a mission startup or mission closure, to our efforts in supply chain, human resources, and administrative activities. So a myriad of activities that fall within the Department of Operational Support. And for today's conversation, we want to go through a hypothetical that might resonate with many of you who are either in the UN ecosystem, or if you worked anywhere else, a challenge that you probably have faced before. And that's, if you want, and the problem that we're going to solve together, or the challenge statement we're going to solve together, is how do you make a leave request process, more innovative? So, let's all go through a journey where, let's say you have decided you want to go to Hawaii for vacation. Wonderful. So you have that idea in mind, but you also requesting that leave, right? Requesting that leave to your manager, to your team, whoever approves it, is pretty challenging, right? Oftentimes, no matter where we work, the process is usually very manual in some sense. There's a lot of uncertainty, and it's time consuming, right? It's manual in the sense that you have to ask people on your team, hey, who else is leaving at the same time? Are we conflicting? Uncertainty being around the fact that because you don't know if others are leaving, you never know if your leave request is going to get approved. And all these things take really a lot of time. And so together, we're going to work through this challenge statement and see how the toolkit, as it exists, can help you get to what hopefully is a better solution than what exists today. Okay. And if you think, if you kind of think about the toolkit itself, right, the notion of discovery, design, and deliver, we always, of course, want to start with discovery, right? As we noted, for the toolkit being very human-centered focus, we always want to presume that we ourselves don't know what the actual problem is, right? When we talk about, for example, the challenges of making a leave request, i.e. a request for PTO or vacation, you don't actually know why there's a problem with that process. You just know you don't like it, so there's a challenge. And so we start with discovery, right? And the reason we have a focus on discovery here is we want to make sure that the approach you take in your innovation process is context driven, that you understand the environment in which your innovation will work, and you understand the people, the stakeholders, as to what they want. The last thing you ever want to do with an innovation program is solve something that doesn't exist, solve the wrong problem, or solve a problem for which stakeholders will not ultimately buy into. So discovery is quite important. And then within discovery, of course, we talk about discovering people's perceptions, which come through understanding the processes that exist, and of course the people that are part of that process. And then of course, by virtue of that and the data analysis that you would do following, you understand the problem that you are in fact trying to solve for. And one of the core components of both the toolkit and of course our innovation lifecycle is around that notion of understanding the process and people. And so the toolkit, one of the things that you'll see, as I mentioned earlier, are templates, right? So this is an example of a template that the toolkit has. This one's focused on process mapping. How do you map out a process for whatever innovation that you're trying to deploy? Again, whether it's a technology project that you're working through, whether it's a policy project, whether it's a systems project, everything we do ultimately at work or in life has some process to it, right? There's an impetus, a starting point, and there's some end point. And there's a series of decisions that happen and activities that happen that enable us to get from A to Z. And so that's what we want to do together with you right now. Right. So what we're going to ask is, for those of you who are interested and able, work with us, right? Work with us to actually map out a leave request, right? So within your respective organization, how does this actually look and feel? If you have paper next to you, please grab it. If you're working, of course, on your laptop, open up a Word document. And we're going to give everyone about a minute to 2 minutes to finish this process map for us, right? And what I mean by that, and let me just do this, right? So this is the process map that we've created that is a little more UN focused, right? Everything starts with the staff member who decides to go on holiday, and it ends with them taking their said holiday. But a lot of things have to happen in between to make that magic work. And so think about where you work, where you may want to work if you're still a student, and what you think the current world for how you might go from, hey, I want to go on vacation to Hawaii, to, hey, now I'm in Hawaii. What steps happen to make that happen? So we're going to give everyone a minute and a half to work through that, and then we're going to come back together. So there's a timer that's on, and you should be able to see. Perfect. Okay, so there's a timer right here. So again, everyone take a minute and some change to draft up your current process for how you might request leave in your respective organization. Maybe another 45 seconds. It can be a very rough process map. It's just for you to kind of think about how you do process mapping and get in the habit of making that part of your workflow. Splendid. We're gonna continue. And so, again, here's an example of what a process map might look like. I'm gonna skip through. This is what a process map might look like. But obviously here we did it in a more fancy way, doing it obviously on a slide through various tools. But the key here being, it's very, when you think about your innovation, don't just jump. We really push our teams here not to jump to the innovation, right? Not to just jump to what they think the solution might be, and take the time to be methodical, and actually, do that analysis. Here, the analysis, of course, is the process that it takes, just to kind of make sure that when you are in fact delivering on whatever that solution might be, it in fact reflects reality and solves for reality. And so again, within the toolkit, once we have that discovery phase, once that team has done that process analysis, the stakeholder analysis, underlying often all of that is data analysis, and through that effort has discovered the exact problem that they want to solve for, it's only at that point do we work on designing our innovation, right? What in fact solutions might exist to tackle the problem that we've identified. And so in the design phase of our innovation lifecycle, we really work to tailor to user needs. Right? Oftentimes, it's our default that, to solve for what we think users need. And we do that because we haven't actually asked users anything. And so, if we're able to do discovery well, we know what users will want. And through that, we're of course able to minimize any risk of implementation and ensure that there's stakeholder support. And so in the design phase of innovation for our department, we think of everything about how do you ideate solutions, right? There's usually more than one solution or innovation that can be used to solve said problem. Some solutions are better than others. Some solve for more critical aspects of your work. And so there's a big, of course, emphasis on user testing, right? You'll find that in the toolkit broadly, there's a very hard focus on users, right? Those who are beneficiaries of the work. And the reason we do that is because with any innovation, there is some disruption that happens, right? There's some change that's going to be uncomfortable. And the best way to minimize that change is to make sure that you've brought your users into the entire process, all the way from thinking about what are you solving for, to designing solutions that, of course, in fact, meet those users' needs. And then, of course, when you implement, finding avenues to gather their feedback, which we'll cover momentarily. And so for today's conversation, again, we're going to do another activity together. We want to focus on mock designs, right? Mock designs are quite important because they allow you to do your innovation in a low fidelity way. Before innovation at times can be pricey when it comes to time use, financial resources, or otherwise, right? And so we want to make sure within our innovation lifecycle, we're picking the solutions that are most viable. And to do that, instead of just building out, a fancy gadget, or kind of, extending resources that maybe utilized otherwhere, we want to focus here on low fidelity solutions first. And so going back to our initial example, right, of this leave request situation. Again, you want to go to Hawaii and you're trying to figure out how do I get there, even though it's super cumbersome to make that request happen. What you see in front of you, again, was a mapping that I did of the current world initially. And what I've mapped here now, for example, is the new world, right? When we think about mock designs, Mock designs can be of any portion of that activity. So what I've designed here is a mock design of that new process. How would that new world look in my ideal world? And in my new world that I defined, I thought there should be some kind of app, right? A mobile app that would be developed and that would do some fancy, backend connections and solve my problem. This is an example of a mock design. But of course, you can mock design, as I mentioned, anything, right? So while I mock design initially the process, I could also mock design the app that I want to build out, right? And the key here being, in the design phase, you're designing everything without actual, in this case, technical resources. But you're trying to figure out in a low fidelity way, what can the market handle, and what best meets the market's needs. The market, of course, being the end users and the beneficiaries of your innovation. And so the key here being, how do we get something to market? How do we get something to our users to get us feedback and quickly iterate, right? The last thing you want to do is spend so many resources on something only to realize the moment you show it to a user that it in fact doesn't work for them. And so what we're going to ask for you now is taking another minute and a half, and develop in this situation an app, right? A mock design of an app that you think would solve the problem that you're trying to solve for, which is the fact that the ability to make a leave request is very challenging. And maybe it's challenging because the data is available and separate in different systems. So, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's through your laptop, design an app that you think would be a good mock design for making a leave request. So we'll give everyone about another minute to do that. Maybe another 20 more seconds. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be something that you feel like you could bring to a user and say, react to this. Okay. For the sake of time, we're gonna continue, but continue to kind of draft up what your mock design might look like. So here's what we did, right? This looks real, but it's actually, again, just a mock-up. So none of this is actually functional. And we did it, of course, on an online tooling. You can do it, with pen and paper, as kind of exists in this situation, right? So what we did, we mock design of a situation where you'd have your name somewhere, you'd have some kind of buttons where you would denote the type of leave you're making. You'd have calendars saying when do you start, when do you come back, and you have this ability to do a conflict check. Because maybe there's others on your team who've also made a request to leave that you aren't aware of. While it looks very official, again, it doesn't actually exist. But we would do this so that before we, of course, start going to engineers, let's say, and say build this out, we can share this with an end user and say, if this app existed today, and you'd probably have a few more mock-ups, would this meet your needs? The user would give feedback saying, I like this, I don't like this is confusing. and you would iterate. The notion of mock designs is focused on iteration, right? You create something, it might not be perfect, that's completely fine, but you're able to get quick, relevant feedback from those beneficiaries and make those changes happen in your innovation process. And then finally, right, you discovered the problem, you were able to design some solutions, and through that iterative notion of feedback and user testing, able to determine which innovation, which solution that you have best meets the user's needs, right? Oftentimes you're going to have multiple mock designs, you're going to have multiple solutions you're testing out, but given that we all live in environments and work in environments that are resource constrained, you can generally probably only deploy one innovation to solve that problem, the one most viable to the user's needs. And that's where you focus on delivery, right? And this is where you're actually putting your innovation, your plan into action. Innovations by virtue of being novel and innovative, the moment you launch them, technically, are no longer in vogue in some sense, right? There's always going to be something that you can fix and improve on. And so part of that delivery process and life cycle is on getting the measurement of its real world effectiveness. One, are you in fact solving the thing you wanted to solve for? And then two, based on how the market's reacting, are you adjusting based on the feedback? That way you are in fact, again, solving what you want to solve for, and then continue being innovative, right? Innovation just doesn't end because you delivered on whatever you were delivering for, but that's just one instance of that innovation. And you have to continue to refine and improve to ensure that you're thinking through what the market needs, right? For example, the app that I mocked up, that app might work perfectly the moment I launch it, but if in 2 weeks, a thing like ChatGPT launches, and there's a way for me to use generative AI in that app, the app is actually no longer that innovative, right? So then I need to kind of think again, right? How can I deploy new technologies, new systems to make that app and that solution solve the problem in a better way, right? So there's always that iterative approach to innovation that is really embodied and embedded in the toolkit itself. For this phase, we actually won't go through a plan together, but part of the delivery process is creating a risk mitigation plan. And here's an example of kind of what we mocked up as a risk mitigation plan for the app that we just mentioned. And in the toolkit itself, you would have this example available to you, as well as following that a blank template for you to actually fill out as part of your innovation project. So, you've all joined today's conversation because you hopefully have an interest in innovation, whether it's just starting off or you're deep into the innovation front. But, I would say, as you kind of think about innovation, whether it's in your respective team, your organization, or broadly, there's key steps, of course, that you can take, right? Whether it's with this toolkit or otherwise. I would say that the 3 core things, right? Of course, one is apply. Apply the tools and templates that exist in this innovation toolkit or otherwise in your work, and then find ways to either develop or deploy a toolkit in your respective organizations. Earlier, you all shared feedback about why innovation is hard. You talk about culture, you talk about leadership and resources, right? One of the best ways by which we can, of course, actually create a culture of innovation, the area of innovation, is, of course, to drive that forward ourselves and to equip people with the skills and knowledge that they need, and to find ways to make that happen within your respective teams and organizations. On the notion of culture, right? Find ways to engage with innovation. What that means is no matter kind of how large or small your role might be, find ways to promote cultures of curiosity and continuous learning. And of course, innovation is difficult. Innovation is not without failure. And embrace the idea of course, celebrating and recognizing small wins. Right? For our within our department, especially for those who use our toolkit, we look for ways to highlight them because we know they're bucking the trend. And it's important to highlight those who are in fact trying to improve the work that we do. And then, as you're benefiting from either this toolkit or whatever tool that you develop for your respective organization, as you see successes, highlight those successes of that improved problem solving. And then, within our department, of course, we focus on efficiency and effectiveness. So, we really focus on emphasizing that work as well. Again, the key takeaway here being, you all have major roles to play around innovation. And I would say find where you and your skill set might fit best. Within the Department of Operational Support, what we found was having a curated approach, and by virtue of that, a shared language that we could all agree upon was crucial to driving innovation forward. No matter where you sit in the department is 900 and some people, no matter where you sit, physically, location-wise, or work-wise, by having a shared understanding and a shared language, we're able to kind of overcome at least some of the hurdles that perhaps prevent people from wanting to innovate. And so, think about what hurdles exist in your respective team and organizations, and if having a shared understanding, a shared language, and a shared methodology would in fact help you drive your work forward. And so again, think really here about discovery, right? How do you discover what you want to solve for? How do you design the solutions that in fact will be the most innovative and valuable to driving your work forward? And then of course, emphasizing delivery, right? How do you of course deliver on the work that you want to do? Thank you. Hopefully everyone found this to be somewhat informative. As I mentioned, the toolkit is available to you. You can find it when you registered for this session. But I do want to leave a bit of time here for Q&A and to make sure that we're able to address any questions that you might have. So let me turn it over to the group. Happy to answer any questions that arise, whether it's about the toolkit itself, or just broadly about how to think through innovation. Okay, hearing no questions. Yes, so if you go to the UN 2.0 week website, where you register for this session, it's in the blurb. The link to the toolkit is in the blurb. And one thing I'll flag is I mentioned the tool is a bit meaty. It's 70-some pages. Use the toolkit as it works for you, right? You might find that for your innovation projects, you need every step to make it happen. Wonderful. You might find that, okay, you have a smaller project you're working on, which you only need 1 or 2 tools. Right? Well, while we've created something that's meant to be end-to-end and comprehensive, find what works for you, find the methodology, the tools that best align to your respective needs. I will also just share for those of you who are internal to the UN ecosystem, a link that you can use to also just access the toolkit itself. And just put that in the chat. Yeah, so a great question. How do we kind of collect ideas? So just separately from this toolkit, as a department, we're also actually launching, and we're working to launch an accelerator to actually harness innovation ideas and work through this methodology through a multi-week program. And so right now, the way we collect ideas is both, top down. So leadership define kind of what ideas people are working on, but we're also working to enable and advance innovation through that way as well. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, I want to make sure everyone gets their time back. Again, thank you so much for joining today's session. I hope you found it useful. Again, the toolkit is available to you. You can access it, as I mentioned, to the UN 2.0 week website. Just go back into where you registered for the session, and there's a link that you can use to download the toolkit. I will also just share my email in the chat as well. For those if you're kind of navigating the space and have questions, of course, feel free to reach out. But again, greatly appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you're all enjoying UN 2.0 week. And thank you for joining today's session. Have a great rest of your Thursdays. Bye-bye.